All right. Good evening, everybody. We'll get started here in just a minute. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up in the chat. I think it's best to do a quick sound check before each live stream because sometimes we have some difficulties. So just let me know if you could hear me. All right. I'm seeing a lot of the thumbs ups come through in the chat, so we will kick this thing off, all right? Okay, welcome back everybody to Walks and Wall Street. Today is October 30th, 2023, and it's about 9:06 p.m. Eastern Time here in New York City. Now, there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, if you tuned into the Market to Look Ahead live stream last night, that is the day, Sundays, when we go day by day, line item by line item, and cover all of the major events that are going to be happening on Wall Street for the week ahead. Now, doing a quick review, last week was a major week for corporate earnings, particularly in the Magnificent Seven. For those of you who don't know what the Magnificent Seven is, they're essentially all of the major tech stocks that are propping up this market. If you head over to slickcharts.com, once again, that is slickcharts.com, and you click on the S&P 500. It's a really good resource that breaks down every single company in the S&P by market cap. And last week, we had the vast majority of mega cap tech stocks reporting their corporate earnings. We heard from Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. We heard from Amazon, Microsoft, and Alphabet. Now, there were some good reports and there were some bad reports, and we covered that to the point of ad nauseum here. But looking forward to this week, we have probably the most anticipated earnings report of the quarter, and that is Apple. Yes, Apple is going to report earnings this week, Tim Cook's company, and it is highly, highly anticipated. As of right now, Apple is the most valuable company in the S&P 500, and it makes up over 7% of the entire index. So this is why it is much anticipated. Because if you have one single stock making up close to 7% of the entire index, well, you could rest assured there's going to be some volatility there. So assuming Apple crushes it and blows earnings out of the water, and let's say if the stock is up 5%, well, that's probably going to carry the rest of the market with it, right? Because Apple makes up a large portion of the market capitalization of the S&P. But to the contrary, we could say the same thing if Apple bombs. If they report a horrible, horrible quarter and the stock is down 10% after hours and it sells off throughout the day, well, that's going to bring the indices down because it makes up such a high market cap, such a very, very high weighting. Now, it's funny because today was not the day that Apple reported earnings, but they did report something very important. I'm sure many of you guys are already filled in on this. Apple announces their brand new M3 chip, and they also reduced their pricing on some of their MacBook Pro models. Did you guys see that? So we'll quickly sort of go over essentially what Tim Cook says are going to be some of the new features of this chip. Now, the new computers include the MacBook Pro and iMac models. They will go on sale next week and have the same design as last year's model. The main difference is their new chipset, and the chipset is huge. This is big. This is what we've been talking about. Now, Apple's iMac hadn't been refreshed since 2021. That's actually the computer I have. So I have the iMac from April of 2021. And it's the MacBook Pro models that got the new chip upgrade in January. So Apple also released a 15-inch MacBook Air laptop in June. So a lot of new product set coming out. But as we know, the chip announcement, this brand new M3 chip, is essentially what everybody is going to be very excited for. Now, Apple is promising faster speeds, longer battery life, and at the higher end of the spectrum, right? So if you buy the top of the end MacBook Pro, you're going to be able to have the horsepower you need to develop artificial intelligence applications. So that is huge. That is big. And it's kind of surprising because Tim Cook very rarely uses the term AI, right? He's been one of those CEOs to kind of stray away and kind of shy away from using that buzzword, if you will. Quite to the contrary of Mark Zuckerberg at Meta, as well as the CEO of Alphabet or Google, where they talk about AI pretty much in every other sentence in their earnings report. So to recap, Apple is going to cut the price of its entry-level 14-inch MacBook Pro, I believe from $2,000 all the way down to about $1,600. However, that will get the less powerful M3 chip. Instead, the Pro-level chip will be on the higher graded models. Another thing we have to talk about, another major piece of news, comes out of our lovely U.S. Treasury. Yeah, that's right. I guess... Well, I would assume all of you can probably just take the words out of my mouth here. The Treasury announces plans to borrow about $776 billion in the final 3 months of the year. I mean, I don't want to get... Obviously, I'm not going to get political. I respect everybody's political beliefs and viewpoints, but it just seems like, in this point in time, it's become like monopoly money, right? It's sort of like we have a blank check, and it's like, what's another $100 billion? What's another $200 billion? So the Treasury announces plans to borrow an additional $776 billion in the final 3 months of the year. And guys, this is just 10 days after the government announced it is running a $1.7 trillion deficit for fiscal year 2023. I'll repeat that one more time. 10 days ago, we talked about this on the live stream. The government announced that it is running a $1.7 trillion deficit for fiscal year 2023. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the funny thing. You guys want to laugh a little bit? So even though the Treasury announced that they're going to borrow an additional $776 billion, it actually came in below Wall Street's expectations. Wall Street was expecting the government to borrow $800 billion. So I guess always look on the bright side of life there. But I guess that's the privilege you get when you have the world's reserve currency, which we will talk about today. Lastly, team, this is very important, and is going to be a phenomenal resource for you and everybody who's watching the live stream. So today, we had the very famous JP Morgan Robinhood Investor Conference this year in New York City for 2023. And my favorite two investors were speaking at the conference, and they also did a little bit of an impromptu interview with one another. Now, I would highly, highly, highly recommend all of you take some time out of your night and the week. Can't watch it tonight. Take some time out of the week and watch it. Listen to it, play it again and again and again, and really try to retain that information. So if you want to listen to the Robinhood New York City 2023 Fireside Chat with Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones, just type !PTJ in the chat. Once again, !PTJ in the chat. And I've programmed the Nightbot to give you all the link to the interview with Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones at this year's JP Morgan Chase Robinhood New York City Summit. You know what? Since I'm here by the computer, I'll just go ahead and drop the link in the chat. And it's funny because as we talk about the government borrowing more and more money, right? As we talk about the Treasury announcing they're going to borrow an additional $776 billion, Stanley Druckenmiller pointed out something very, very interesting in his keynote speech today, or I should say the interview. He said, if you think for a second that the U.S. government is not going to cut some of, like Social Security, all the benefits for the retirees, you have another thing coming. Because as the government spends more and borrows more money, guess what? This isn't 2021 anymore when interest rates were near zero. Interest rates are going to continue to rise, and as we borrow and borrow more money and accumulate more debt, well, guess what? It's going to be increasingly harder for the government to service its debt, which means a higher portion of revenues are going to be paying interest on that debt. Last but not least, everybody, if you scan the QR code on your screen, last Thursday, if you did not get the newsletter yet, go and check your spam folder. I had a couple people emailing me saying, hey, Tom, I signed up for your newsletter. I did not get it. Check your spam folder. We've been having some issues with that. So every other Thursday after the market closes, I will send everybody, all of the Walks on Wall Street subscribers, my equity research for free. Completely free. It's a great way to support the stream. So if you scan the QR code, you will be able to read our latest Behind the Street newsletter post that I sent to everybody on Thursday night. And I've even updated it so you don't have to read it. You could just listen to it. It is fully equipped with an audio podcast version that is narrated by myself. So once again, scan the QR code, punch in your email, or type in !news in the chat. Once again, !news, NEWS, and the Nightbot will drop the link to our Substack where you can read all of our archived research for free and receive it every other Thursday in your inbox. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close the laptop here. I will say hello to everybody in the chat, and I want to wish all of you a very, very happy Halloween Eve. And we'll get started in just a minute. Let me pack up my stuff, and we will be on our way. All right, let me clip on the microphone here, guys, and we are off. Let's do this thing. Tonight we are going to head down to 34th Street, Penn Station again, and we will be all set. So once again, everybody, happy Halloween Eve. Hopefully you all had a killer start to the week. Hopefully you're staying productive and you are starting off the week with a bang. All right, let's stroll to the top and say hello to the team here, because that is the most important part of the day. I see Noah is here. What's up? Good to see you. Fascinating Joe Ratz. Welcome, welcome. The 7-9F. Colton Manning. Hang with Mark Mom. Tobias is here. It's good to see you. Ula Muhammad. David S. British Gray from Tampa, Florida is here too. Danny Morris II. Danny, what's up? Hold on, let me turn this off. Get that out of the way. All right, cool. Ken Glass, I see Cody is here. Says, hey, Tom. David Hernandez. What's up, David? Welcome, everybody. Hopefully it doesn't rain on us. Now, I left the office, and I left my umbrella in the office because I didn't want to lug it around. I didn't want to carry it around. I've been carrying it around for the past few days in the city. So hopefully, fingers crossed, okay? Fingers crossed we don't get rained on. Hopefully we don't get rained on. Hang with Mark Mom. So I'm eating my Halloween stash now. Poor kids may only be left with Starbucks and Smarties. Oh, Starburst and Smarties. I was like, damn, hang with Mark Mom. Slinging $25 Starbucks gift cards to the kids. I want to know what neighborhood you're in. All right, this is the St. Regis Hotel. Beautiful hotel. I love the architecture. And one of the things I really like about the building, we'll try to see if I can get it in the frame here. It has one of the original taxi stands. You see that? So the bellmen of the hotel still kind of hang out in that original sort of like bellman stand, taxi stand, which is pretty cool. Some New York history. And then you have the Peninsula Hotel. Let's take just one more quick peek at the front of it. Beautiful building. I see Juan Fernandez from the one and only Miami, Florida. It's good to see you, Juan. Trust you are well today in the sunny tropical Miami. I wish I was there. Dan Sang says, Tom, are you anywhere close to the Friends apartment, 90 Bedford Street? I think there are plenty of people there to pay tribute to. Yeah, that's horrible. So I'm not. I'm all the way near Billionaires Row, but maybe we'll head down there tonight. Yeah, just the horrible tragedy. Now, I've never watched Friends, and I think I told you guys this, but it's still, it's heartbreaking because for me, and Scotty, thank you so much for your $2 donation. I use an iPhone 13 mini. Once again, an iPhone 13 mini, but I think the gentleman was 50 years old, and that is very, very young. It's particularly in modern times. So to have somebody, unfortunately pass away at that age, it sucks. Particularly just how influential he was. Now, again, a little bit before my time, right? But still, the point still stands. It's a bummer to hear that. Another thing that was really just heartbreaking to hear today. One of my good friends, well, I should say acquaintances. He was one of my buddies back in college. He didn't go to the same schools. He actually went to Boston College. Anyway, was a big hockey player, huge hockey player. He actually went on to, I think, play in one of the NHL, just a league below the NHL. I'm not a big hockey guy, but apparently he played with this other player that passed away, I think it was yesterday, in his minor league game in England. And it was the most brutal, gruesome sports injury I've ever seen. And I haven't heard from my friend in 2 years, but he texted me, he's like, dude, I can't believe it. I just don't even want to describe it. It was so brutal. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy things have been happening. Just crazy things have been happening in this world. So it's nuts. Anyway, for those of you who are just joining, I did want to share a few things. That I think are going to be really good resources for the group here. So if you type !PTJ in the chat, once again, it's !PTJ in the chat. It's going to drop the link to Stan Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones' keynote interview today at the JP Morgan Chase Robinhood Conference. They have the annual conference here in New York City every year. And for those of you who don't know who Paul Tudor Jones nor Stanley Druckenmiller are, they're two of the greatest traders of all time, right? The most successful traders with, verifiable track records, just unbelievable. Paul Tudor Jones is most famous, I should say, for predicting the 1987 stock market crash. And Stan Druckenmiller has a ridiculous track record. I think his family office has a CAGR, or a compounded annualized growth rate. What is that? Oh. Of over 20% a year, which is just insane. It's just unheard of. And they shared some of their concerns, not only on global macro, but particularly the, I should say, outlook on the United States stance as a global superpower. And they also talked about the greenback, or the US dollar, as a global world reserve currency. This is 53 West 53rd Street. It's one of the big buildings on Billionaires Row. And there were some things that I agreed with Stan Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones on, but there were some things I did disagree on. I think we'll start off by doing a quick deep dive into some of the things I do agree on, and that is, the continuation of the United States of kicking the can down the road and just borrowing and spending and borrowing so much money and running up all these deficits. Now, before we go into that, in full transparency, I just want to say I don't want this conversation to get, hyperbolic, political. I get both political sides of the spectrum here. I understand that under the Trump administration, we spent an ungodly amount of money ran up the debt, and we're continuing to do that here with the Biden administration. So it's both sides of the aisle. Okay, I just want to make that clear before we have some banter back and forth in chat. But what I really want to focus on is not, nitpicking the political side, but talking about the ramifications down the line if something doesn't change. Particularly if we continue to run these deficits and continue to borrow and continue to spend at the rate we are currently spending, all while interest rates are climbing back to some of the highest levels in 20 years. And if you had to ask me, I would actually argue interest rates are probably going to stay elevated and remain at these levels for some time, which causes a whole different set of problems, because that means the US government is going to have to pay more and more and more interest on our debt. With the conclusion being this. We'll quickly show the front of 53 West 53rd Street. So with the conclusion being this, we have a rapidly aging population here in the United States. We are going to have an absolute boom in retirees, which means that is going to put a drain on social safety nets, right? Such as Social Security and the like. Now, you hear talking points from both sides of the political spectrum, particularly the Democrats and some Republicans, that claim we will not touch Social Security. We will not cut Social Security by any means. Oh, looks like they're cutting up the road here. Let's try to go up a little bit because it is extremely noisy here. We'll walk uptown and then we'll cut across. This is on the corner of West 54th Street and Avenue of the Americas. This is Fortress Investments right in front of us. This is the hedge fund that Michael Novogratz used to work at. Hey, Elliott Wave Review says, hey Tom, are you going to walk past Matthew Perry's? I don't know. We'll try to go down there. We will try to go down there. You know what? That was like the third time somebody asked that in the chat, so let's do it actually. Let's do that. Let me make a U-turn here. I'm turning the car around, team. I'm turning the bus around. So we're going to turn the bus around here, fasten your seatbelts, and we are going to do a brisk walk down to the West Village. Because I think, I do think it's appropriate to see that. Because I think he was particularly, even though, again, I never really watched the show, I think he was very important to New York culture. And I think that's important to go down there. So let's do that now. I just have to wait for the light. But anyway, essentially what I was saying is there's politicians on both sides of the spectrum, right? Democrats and Republicans that are saying, oh, there's no way that we're going to touch any of these social safety nets, right? We're not going to, cut Social Security or Medicare, Medicaid. We're never going to touch it. And I believe, okay, again, on both sides of the aisle, that they are, well, I'll be blunt. They're lying. They're obviously lying. Because if you do the math, if we continue to spend and borrow at the levels and the rates that we are spending and borrowing at, you're going to have to cut something. And those cuts are going to come from Social Security. Now, the reason why the politicians won't be upfront and honest about it is because they want to get reelected, right? They want to get votes. They want to get reelected. If a politician came up and, leveled with the American people and said, hey, listen, we need to cut Social Security if we continue to spend like this. But if we, rein in our spending, then we won't have to cut Social Security. You're not going to get any votes. The American public wants its cake. They want to have their cake and eat it too. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. So, on both sides, the only way a politician is going to get elected is through lying, unfortunately. So, we're going to continue to run these deficits. We're going to continue to spend all of this money. And this is something Paul Tudor Jones was talking about in the keynote speech today. So why are we talking about it, right? So I know you guys are saying, okay, so what is the point, Tom? Like, what is the point? Well, the point is this. I think more now than ever before, it is extremely, extremely important for individuals, Americans like me and you, to be hyper self-sufficient, right? Do not rely on anybody, particularly the US government, to bail you out in retirement, right? You need to be doing that on your own 100%. And that includes if you have some sort of a pension or whatnot. As a fail-safe, I think it's best not to trust any of it, because you never know, right? So try to be self-sufficient. Try to, save and invest as much as possible and delay the instant gratification, right? So if you could take a portion of your income, invest it, don't touch it, accumulate assets through your early life, because with the way things are turning out with fiscal and monetary policy, they're going to have to cut some of these social safety nets, because I have almost zero confidence in our government to do the right thing. That's my take. Now, it doesn't mean I'm right. I could be totally wrong. But let's say I'm wrong, but you took the advice and said, you know what? I was fully self-sufficient. Now I'm worth a couple $1,000,000 and I still get my Social Security. Well, then great. Then go have a ball. But if you don't take it serious, and if you don't prepare, and if you don't become fully self-sufficient, and 20 years, 30 years down the line, the government says, hey, we got to bite the bullet and cut Social Security, well then, everybody is, you guessed it, out of luck. So, I don't know, I'll stop talking, and I want to read some of the comments because I'm interested in what you guys think. Because this is an important conversation because it impacts a lot of people, right? Over the next 20 years, we are going to have the most amount of Americans ever retiring. And I believe, anyway, it's very important to look out for our seniors and take care of our seniors. And I think that with the way things are going, it doesn't look like it. Hey, Hang with Mark Mom says, you're so freaking right, Tom. I've been taking it seriously since 90s inflation. Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to, and I'm not trying to be doom and gloom and fear, right? It's quite the opposite, right? If you double down and triple down your efforts on becoming self-sufficient, becoming fully autonomous, it's a very liberating feeling not to have to rely on anybody. Hey, my friend Bree Grams is here. Hey, Bree. 2548 says, not to get controversial, but I think they should cut welfare programs and things like child tax cuts first. The elderly deserve something to fall back on. Hey, look, I think these are important conversations to have. At least you're circulating some ideas. Adams is a big boom coming in for home health care as well as older multifamily buildings, is Adam. Adam, I think you're very wise, and I agree with you. Now, we do have a lot of new people here, so I'm not sure you guys sort of know my background, but that is the main industry in which I used to sell into. I exclusively sold into home health care agencies, nursing homes, and hospitals here in the New York metropolitan area. So if anybody knows somebody who works at a home health care agency in New York City, chances are I've built out all that infrastructure. That was all us. And here's what I mean by that. We sold almost all of the EVV software to all of the big home health care agencies, some of the largest, like Ultimate Care, Nursing Personnel Home Care, and Motive Care. and they're actually a publicly traded company. We help them build out their technology stack to where the home health aides, instead of clocking in and out on physical pieces of paper, they can have a company-provided smartphone or a tablet. We would totally secure that with the cybersecurity MDM software, right? Then we would upload their HHA exchange, their MedFleet, and their Viventium so they could clock in and out, accept or decline patient cases remotely, and check their pay stubs. All remotely from a tablet, and totally gets rid of all the paper. And I agree with you, the home healthcare industry is only going to continue to grow. And the percentage of GDP that Americans spend on healthcare is only going to grow. So I 100% agree with you, because I've seen it firsthand on the ground floor. I used to work with all of these home healthcare agencies, nursing homes, assisted living facilities every day. You're absolutely right. Wow, guys, look at this. Hold on. I gotta make a quick U-turn. Just for some anecdotal data. Look at this. We are right outside the Manhattan at Times Square Hotel. And look at the check-in counter. Guys, this is a packed house here today. Tourism is coming back. You have a line all the way down through the lobby of people checking into the hotel. The Manhattan at Times Square Hotel. Consumer spending still seems robust, I guess, right? Hey, MBA Elias is here. Says, I wish the Fed would make more comments about the deficit. This may put more pressures on the Congress to get this solved, but supposedly the Fed never comments about fiscal policy. Yeah, I mean, MBA Elias, you're 100% right. Now, I think it's because they're technically not allowed to. I think. So don't take that as 100% certainty, but the Federal Reserve, or the central bank, is supposed to operate completely independent. Excuse me. Completely independent of government and fiscal policy. Which I guess kind of makes sense, but they really should probably, say, hey guys, you should probably try to tone it down on the spending, if you will. Hey, Patricia Ivory says, yes, the hotels are totally booked through November and December. Hang with Mark Mom says, anything connected with healthcare will continue. Sickness and need for healthcare doesn't stop. Yeah, no, you're totally right. I agree. Hey, Terrence says, hey, Tom, was on your stream earlier this afternoon. Oh, it's 6:30 in San Francisco. Okay, cool. Nice. So this is Barclays Investment Bank. This used to be the old Lehman Brothers. It's actually a really good shot of Barclays here. You can see all of the pumpkins for the Halloween, I guess. No, but look, guys, I think this is a good conversation to have. Very seldom do we have this conversation on the stream because, quite honestly, I don't like to get the stream riled up, because it tends to get very political, but it is important, right? And since we had the, Robin Hood conference with Paul Tudor Jones and Stan Druckenmiller today, exclusively bringing this up, I think it was appropriate to talk about it. And 10 days ago, we heard from our amazing government, we'll try not to get hit with the trash bags, that for the fiscal year 2023, we are running a deficit to the tune of $1.7 trillion. So something needs to change. And the only political thing I'll say tonight is this, that I think all Americans need to be paying very, very close attention to. We just had about a 30-minute conversation about how we're running a $1.7 trillion deficit. And the US Treasury, Janet Yellen, comes out today and says we're going to borrow an additional $776 billion in the next 3 months, all while geopolitical tensions are rising and we're funneling money to Ukraine. I'm not going to comment on whether I think that's right or wrong. And, we could definitely possibly get sucked into another war here in the Middle East. So do you think the US has money for this? I don't know. Again, I don't want to get into, whether it's right or wrong, because, that's going to set a firestorm in the chat. But that's something we need to be really strongly considering. We are not in the position to, we got to tread carefully here, I guess I'll say. All right, let's try to navigate through Times Square in one piece, and then we will head all the way back down to the West Village, because I really do want to get down to the West Village again. I think you guys are right, so we're going to adhere to that advice from the chat and go to the West Village tonight. But if you're enjoying the live stream so far, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We usually go live every day starting at 8:30 p.m. To the right is Morgan Stanley. Trying to think of what the best way to navigate around Times Square is. Maybe we'll make a left. Here, we'll do this. We'll make a left on 47th. We'll go all the way back to Radio City Music Hall, and then we'll make that right by News Corp. I think that's probably going to be the best. Look at all of this nonsense they got going on here, guys. Yeah, the spinning lights things I think are getting a little bit egregious. All right, so anyway, guys, moving on, right? I think we sort of covered that topic. For those of you who are just joining, if you missed it, we were talking about the keynote interview with Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller. If you want to listen to that, which you should, you've got to listen to this. It's every year the Robinhood Conference hosted by JP Morgan Chase. If you type !PTJ in the chat, you will receive the link to watch it. Watch it a couple times. Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones are two of the best investors ever. So I think it's well worth your while. I'll give you one quick peek. That's where they dropped the ball here. You can see one Times Square all the way in the distance. Patient Lobster, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Times Square. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a detour around here tonight. Alrighty, I think we are good to go. So to sort of segue the conversation here, obviously last week was a major week for corporate earnings on Wall Street. This week is going to be probably just as big, even though we have the lion's share of the Magnificent Seven companies already reported, but we have Apple. We have Tim Cook's company that is going to report. Apple makes up about 7% of the entire market cap of the S&P 500, so that will be very highly anticipated, because if Apple bombs, well, guess what? they're down 10% after hours, that's going to suck the index down as well. If they crush it and they're up 7 to 10% after hours, well, you guessed it, the market's probably going to rally. So I think it's make or break for Apple. I think that's really going to make or break or set the tone of the market. Today, we had a little bit of a rally day on Wall Street. S&P 500 up about 1%, NASDAQ up about 1.25%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average also rallying about 1%. And this is something we talked about in the newsletter. If you read the Behind the Street newsletter, I gave you guys some data points that I look at, particularly as it relates to the percentage of stocks that are sitting above the 200-day moving average. Out of all of the companies in the S&P 500, just 27%, I'll say that again, just 27% of all of the companies in the S&P are trading above the 200-day moving average. That is a significant deterioration in market breadth, like a very, very significant deterioration. And that usually signals not necessarily a market bottom right away, but some sort of a relief rally, right? If you have 27% of stocks trading above the 200 and the vast majority of stocks making new 52-week lows, I mean, that's some serious selling pressure to the downside. That's some serious lack of breadth in the market, and it usually signals some sort of relief rally. Now, as we go further throughout the week, you guessed it, we are going to hear from the Federal Reserve Chairman himself, Jerome Powell. Yeah, we are going to have the second to last FOMC meeting of the year on November 1st, which is in 2 days. Can't even believe that. Tomorrow's Halloween, and it's November 1st. We are going to hear from the Federal Reserve as they announce the new monetary policy guidance. Now, consensus on the street is for a pause. The vast majority of economists and analysts on the street think that the Federal Reserve is going to hold interest rates at 5.25% to 5.5%. Now, I think they'll probably do that, but at the next meeting, the next FOMC meeting, I think they're going to raise by 0.25 percentage point, bringing the year-end Fed funds rate to 5.5% to 5.75%. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But I think that's what the Fed will do, and I think that's what's needed, by the way. I actually think that's what's needed to further put some downside pressure here on inflation. Hey, Double Eagle is here. So Tom, don't underestimate Powell's ability to continue to screw things up. You know, I don't know. I dump on the Federal Reserve more than anybody, but I think Powell's got this one right. And I don't think he's doing that terrible of a job. I think he should have, raised rates a lot earlier, but, he was getting bullied by our former president, which, again, not to make a political statement, I am a conservative, by the way, but just to call a spade, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be totally separate from the government, right? They're separate entities. They have nothing to do with one another. But, during the Trump administration, Donald Trump was hammering Powell and tweeting about it, saying, hey, if you raise rates under my administration, you're out of here, pal. You're going to get fired, which you're really not supposed to do that at all. But that's besides the point. But Powell sort of fell in line and, again, kicked the can down the road. And you only need to have one little catalyst to blow the doors off of this thing. And guess what? The catalyst was probably the biggest catalyst we've ever seen in our entire lifetime is, guess what? The big C, which forced the Federal Reserve to do more quantitative easing, flood the market with liquidity, hold interest rates near record levels, and that caused massive massive inflation. I believe CPI topped out at 9.1%. So, inflation is on its way down. Now, we could argue all day about, how real those CPI numbers are, and I totally get that. We talk about that all the time, but I think you got to keep rates held higher for longer, right in this range, to sort of cool things down a little bit. Particularly in the housing sector, you've got to have the prices of housing, particularly residential, soften here a little bit. You've got to, or it's going to break the American people. So, look, God forbid if you have across-the-board correction, 10% national correction across the board, which is quite significant, by the way. If you have a 10% correction across the board in terms of housing across the United States, that means some specific and individual markets are going to go down a lot more than 10%, maybe even like 30%. But look, I don't think that's a bad thing, because the percentage of income that consumers are spending on housing is at an all-time record high. And even some of the stories I've been hearing, some people say, look, I get paid and 60% of my paycheck goes towards my rent. I can't even save anything. So that's a big problem. It's a big problem in my eyes. But wow, could we just admire how gorgeous the Empire State Building looks right now? This looks fantastic. Look at that. Now, does anybody know why it's lit up in green? It looks beautiful. Steph UF says, Tom, young people need to be able to get into the market. Brad's Brain says, my folks sold their house in 4 days last week. Wow. So the market in some places is still really hot. Adam says, we need to build more housing. We need to act like we are a developing nation. I agree with that too. Now the problem is, again, not to get political, unfortunately, where we need housing the most, it's the biggest pain in the you-know-what to actually build, such as in New York City and in specific places where very high population in California, such as San Francisco, LA, and the like. But you're absolutely right. Now, Adam makes a good point, because if you look at the data, and we are actually going to talk about this next week. We'll wait for the truck to go by. Anyway, we were going to talk about this next week, but if you look at the National Association of Realtors as they release their existing home sales report, you'll see a direct correlation between where housing prices are starting to fall and inventory levels. So in places like Texas and in Florida markets, in more of the rural areas where they've been building a lot of single-family homes, well, you're actually starting to see prices come down a little bit. And you're starting to see transaction volume pick up a little bit. Now, I wrote a piece about this. I wrote an article about this, not last newsletter, but the other newsletter before. If you want to read it, feel free. But I sort of explain how this usually works as it relates to valuations in the residential real estate market. Number one is you start to have the increase in interest rates. That's number one. Number two is you have transaction volumes or transaction activity decline significantly, right? So you have almost a gridlock in the market. And that's exactly where we're at right now. Next, you have prices starting to soften a little bit. So you have prices start to come down. And then you see a pickup in transaction volume. And if you look at new home sales, and Brad, I don't know if Brad is still in the chat, Brad's Brain in the chat pointed this out last week when we got the new home sales numbers, right? New home sales were up big. Now, why is that? Well, when you're selling new product, there's a lot more things you could do. There's a lot more concessions you could do. You know, the sponsors can do pay downs, like they could pay down your rate. They have more flexibility on pricing because they've made all this money during the run-up in this housing boom, so they have a lot of cash on the balance sheet. So if they want to move product and get deals done, well, they can get creative, right? Not so much in the resales market, but if you're buying a sponsor unit, right, or a brand new development, you know, they could give concessions. They could pay down the points on your mortgage. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. So the markets that will probably soften the most are the markets that you're having a lot of supply come on. So places like Texas, particularly in neighborhoods like Austin, Texas and the like, where you've had a massive boom, explosion of demand due to COVID, and now you're having that wane and you're having all the supply come on the market. So unfortunately, you probably won't get that as much in New York City because there's not a lot of supply coming on the market here. But if you want to read that article, if you scan the QR code on your screen, I wrote a little bit of a thesis 2 weeks ago. So if you scan the QR code or type !news, NEWS in the chat, I send out all my research to the Walks in Wall Street subscribers every other Thursday when the market closes. So if you want to receive that, just scan the QR code, punch in your email, and you'll be able to receive that for free. This is the Winter Village at Bryant Park, which looks absolutely gorgeous. But unfortunately, it's closed. I think we just missed it. Dang. It's a bummer. I'm debating on whether... Nah, we won't. I don't want to be a menace. We'll do it tomorrow, I promise you guys. But the Winter Village at Bryant Park is back. I can't believe it's already back, but it is. So maybe if it's open tomorrow, we'll take a walk down here. But all right, let me catch up on some of the chats. I'm not sure if you guys can notice or not, but it's so loud in the city today for whatever reason, between the construction and people clanging and banging on the drums, that I'm trying to avoid the noise. Just because it may not seem as loud on your end if you're watching on like a phone or a TV screen, but for me it's like absolutely exploding the brains out of the back of my skull. So, hey, Meld is here. What's up? Thank you for joining us, Meld. I see Tatted Tara. Tarina says, I love Bryant Park. Winter Village, I do too. All right, let's check out the ice skating rink. All right, so the ice skating rink is free admission? Is that right? Really? Huh, I didn't know that. I thought you had to pay. You definitely have to pay $27 at Rockefeller Center. But I guess since Bank of America sponsors this, the admission is free. Which it should be free. I mean, Brian Moynihan and Bank of America, they make billions, so. Hey, Marilyn from Murray Hill. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining. Hey, Joe is here. This is Tom. You're at Bryant Park, but you're going to head to the West Village. Isn't that a long walk? It's pretty long, but I think we'll be able to do it. Let me check the battery. Yeah, I think we'll be all right. All right, this is Salesforce Tower, our good friend Mark Benioff, ticker symbol CRM. Oscar Diaz is Tom, I probably missed it, but how is inflation doing so far? Oscar, if you type !CPI in the chat, !CPI in the chat, it's going to bring you to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website where you can look at each individual category of inflation in real time. So you could look at food inflation, food at home, you could look at autos, You could look at shelter costs, all in real time, right there. And I wrote about that. And I also wrote about inflation 2 weeks ago, but you're right to be concerned about it. This is One Vanderbilt, and you can see the beautiful Stephen Schwarzman building in the back, the New York Public Library. Well, look, the problem with inflation, which I've said many, many times, and I think all of you would agree, here's my big problem with inflation. And the problem is the following. 40% of core CPI is made up of shelter costs. I'll say that again. So 40% of core inflation is shelter. And obviously, due to the order of liquidity, right? That was the title of one of my last pieces I wrote. Real estate is a less liquid asset than equities. So it takes a long time for rate hikes to hit the market or to impact valuations. So we're just starting to see shelter roll over here. So if you want to see a perfect visual of this, again, if you type !CPI, and it'll drop the link to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, I want you to go ahead and deselect everything on the screen. So when you get to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, just deselect every single category except shelter. And you'll see a visual. It'll kind of look like a curve. And you'll see a visual of shelter costs in America, I think going back to 2020. And you're just starting to see, it's been 6 consecutive months of decelerating shelter costs, but it's still very, very elevated. So the real 2 categories that are still very elevated and we're not making much progress on is shelter and food. And to me, those are the most 2 important things. Because if you look at the hierarchy of needs for a human, well, you need shelter, or you can't be homeless, and you need to eat, or you'll die. You need food. So food, energy, and shelter are sort of the sore spots in inflation, and those are really the only categories that aren't showing too much progress. The most important categories. That's really my main concern. But I mean, I'll ask you guys, think about your daily life. I mean, you guys probably get up and go to work every day. You probably take your family out to a restaurant and eat. You probably cook food at home. You probably pay your rent. You probably pay your mortgage. What are you seeing out there? When you go to the grocery store, have prices declined? Are you starting to see a move in the right direction, or are you continuing to get sticker shock when you leave your grocery store? It's different for everybody across the country, so I'd be interested to see, what you guys are seeing on the ground floor in your neck of the woods. Melt as gas prices have dropped. That's true, they have. I think crude oil today closed at $86 a barrel. Richard Vogel says I'm continuing to get sticker shock. I am too, but then again, I live in the most expensive place in the world. Anthony says, feels like food prices are still increasing. Running at altitudes as grocery and gas prices are starting to come down for me. Well, that's good. That's what we want. B. Cruz says food prices here in Los Angeles are still crazy expensive. So my conclusion is this. I believe it just has to do with where you live. Obviously, I live in New York City and Miami, and those are some of the most expensive places to live in the United States. So I still am getting ridiculous sticker shock. So maybe for some of you who don't live in a crazy expensive city, maybe you're seeing an improvement in prices, which is very good news. Hey, Florida says prices keep going up here in South Florida. Yeah, I've said the Whole Foods in downtown Miami is the most expensive Whole Foods by far anywhere in the country, in my opinion. Hey, Double Eagle says it is crazy because it seems like the middle aisles crap food is what has gone up the most. Really? Interesting. David S.'s thing is prices are up, but quality is down. Also shrinkflation too. Shrinkflation is a real thing. Shrinkflation is not a myth. Particularly at restaurants, guys. Like, I go out to eat sometimes and I notice the portions are like laughably small, but the prices are always higher. For me, whenever I go grocery shopping, the biggest sticker shock I get is when I buy red meat. If I'm buying a New York strip steak or a ribeye or something like that, I mean, there's some serious underwriting that goes into that. Hey, CW, what's up? This is Happy Halloween Eve, Tom. Thank you so much. Happy Halloween Eve to you too. And thank you for joining us on tonight's live stream in New York City. Hey, Elizabeth Gill says, was just going to say that, Tom, shrinkflation. You may pay the same, but the package is definitely smaller. NBA Elias says, some portions at restaurants border on prison food portions. That's not a lie. That is not a lie. Hey, Lee, what's up? Lee, I'm going to send you an email after this. I got to update you on something. Smaller portions are good for the majority of Americans. Oh my God, hilarious. Definitely not for me. Hey, Florida, thank you so much for your kind $10 donation. This is watching from Pompano Beach, Florida. I love these videos. I always learn something, especially about New York City. Well, I'm extremely jealous because I want to be in Florida right now. I wish I was back in Miami Beach. But not to complain, I love New York City too. I just love the heat and humidity. And I know many of you are cringing at that right now. They're like, what? You like the heat and humidity? That's disgusting. I love it. I thrive in it. I really don't know why I was born in the Northeast. I don't know why I was born in New York. I feel like my spirit thrives somewhere tropical. I don't know why. Just the way it is. I don't like snow sports, I don't like skiing, don't like snowboarding, none of that. Anyway, all right, I'm walking over here because, guys, check this out. But Florida, thank you for your very generous donation. I appreciate you, and I'm very happy you're here. But guys, check this out. Fantastic view of one of the most iconic buildings in the world, the Empire State Building. Fantastic. Hang with Mark Moms, Tom. It's still nice weather here in Florida, 84 degrees. Whew. I'm jealous. I can't think about it. I'm going to pretend like it's tropical paradise here in New York City. Hey, Robert is here. What's up, Robert? Omarosa says you don't want to be in North Florida, which is pretty much Georgia. Yeah, I'm a South Florida kind of guy. The tropics. I got to be in the tropics. Hey, Noah says, hey, Tom, do you see it as a negative that big tech companies continue to capture more of the S&P? Apple at about 7%. Hey, everything in Miami is here. What's up? Good to see you. Noah makes a good point, and he asks a good question. Now, look, technology is sort of at runaway terminal velocity pace. And that's usually how all megatrends start. I'm forgetting the name of the book, but there's a really, really good book on this. They're actually starting to put up the Christmas lights here at Macy's. But you'll usually have any type of very successful SaaS startup or tech company. It'll start like this, and then it just goes off on a huge tail, and it just reaches terminal velocity. And that's exactly what a lot of these tech companies have done. They've grown so big and so fast, and they're so profitable because, if you're selling software, chances are the gross margins are ridiculous. And it's very scalable business, right? Scaling a SaaS business, software as a service business, a cloud computing business, is very scalable business because the deliverability of that software is very easy, right? Generally, than a physical product. So what happens is these companies corner market share and they run away at terminal velocity pace and they sit on a massive amount of cash. Now, I want everybody to go do some research here and go to sec.gov and go through the financial filings of Apple, of Microsoft, of Meta, of Google, and take a look at how much cash and equivalents are sitting on the balance sheets of these major tech companies. It's absolutely insane. Now, as I've written about this in the last newsletter, I was talking about the difference between mega cap tech stocks and smaller caps companies, right? So think about Russell 2000. And the problem is this, as we're looking at the Christmas lights here at Macy's. This is the problem we're going to face, everybody. The Federal Reserve is in one of its largest quantitative tightening cycles since Paul Volcker, right? Paul Volcker was known for crushing inflation by jacking interest rates to 20%. That was a very different time. So now we have, on one end of the spectrum, companies like Apple, like Meta, like Microsoft, and like Google that have tons and tons of cash, mounds of cash. A cartoonish, I want you to think about, what's that guy's name? Who's that cartoon? Is it Scrooge McDuck that dives into the pile of money? Anyway, I think you guys get the memo. I want you to think of Tim Cook diving into billions and billions and billions of dollars, because that's essentially what he has in the balance sheet. So in a higher interest rate environment, when you're supposed to be, putting the brakes on the economy, yes, that could slow consumer spending, but guess what that means for all of that cash on the balance sheet? You could park that in, long-dated treasuries or securities that are going to be yielding a very high rate of return, a very high real rate of return, by the way. So it turns out that these tech companies may actually benefit and thrive in a higher interest rate environment. To the contrary, and this is what the point I'm going to make, to the contrary, these Russell 2000 companies that are very small, that have a lot of debt, that are used to finance their operations, well, a larger portion of earnings of Russell 2000 companies, a larger portion of their earnings goes towards principal pay down on their debt. And as that debt starts to roll over at higher rates, one of two things are going to happen. It's either going to lead to severe earnings recessions in those companies, and the market is already reflecting that. The market is outlooking 6 months. So I think a lot of that activity is already priced in. Or some of these companies are going to go bankrupt. So that will allow, if I had to make a prediction, I think you're going to see a lot of these big mega cap tech companies start to strategically deploy their capital and acquire some of these startup small cap companies and essentially buy them for cash value, because valuations are so depressed and they have a huge pocketbook to be able to buy whatever they want whenever they want. So I think that's what's going to happen. So to Noah's question, and again, I don't have all the answers, but if I'm just piecing this together, to his point, Apple now makes up 7% of the S&P 500 and generates a lot of earnings. I think through this quantitative tightening cycle, you're going to have the bigger companies get bigger and stronger because they have more durable balance sheets, and the smaller companies get, essentially taken out to the woodshed and shot, and all of the big companies will pick them up for pennies on the dollar. But that'll also create opportunities for individual investors too, because you got to understand the market is forward-looking 6 months. So if you look at a chart of the Russell 2000, it's a brutality. It's been getting clocked, right? But I think much of that is priced in. Now, this isn't to go out and buy a bunch of small cap Russell 2000 stocks. That's not what we do here. We don't give out advice. We just have general conversations in the market, but on a valuation basis, some of these companies are probably going to trade for cash. And that could present itself a very lucrative opportunity for savvy investors. But I think governments will probably get involved and, break up these big tech companies. They're already trying to do that because they're essentially going to become monopolies. I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat? Do you think that governments over the next 5 years are going to try to bust and break up some of these big tech companies? Just because they've grown so big, they've grown so massive, and they have such influence that maybe it is stifling competition. Who knows? Hey, Brilski, what's up? Says we can't handle higher interest rates, and keeping interest rates artificially low will exacerbate the pain of inflation. We are screwed. Yeah, we'll see. Definitely with higher interest rates means the U.S. government is going to need to pay more money in interest on its debt. All right, everybody, let's pick up our pace a little bit. For those of you who are just joining us, we are going to be walking to the West Village tonight and try to check out the, what are we checking out? The Friends house? I think you guys will direct me on where to go. I'm not too familiar with Friends. Hey, Sparks Carnival says, let's go Amazon, Netflix, Adobe, and McDonald's. Also had a very good day today. Sparks Carnival, what is going on? Sparks Carnival, now that you're in the chat, I have a question for you. 2 questions. I'm going to hit you with 2 questions. Question number 1, what did you think about the Apple announcement today of the new M3 chip? And what do you think about the price cuts for the new entry-level MacBook Pro? And number 2, what are you expecting for Apple's earnings report later this week? Do you think they're going to beat expectations? Do you think iPhone 15 sales are going to come in robust? What do you think? Or do you think they're going to bomb? Let us know. Hey, go for Hokies. Because I don't think the current members of our government understand big tech. You're not wrong. Oof, God. You get away. You're not wrong on that. I always like walking down Broadway here because it kind of is less chaotic than being right at 34th Street and in Midtown Manhattan. You kind of get a little bit of peace. Hey, Mike, this is a big win for the Rangers tonight. What's up, Mike? You go to the game? What do you think? Sparks Carnival says, I think Apple will be disappointing, sadly. Really? Interesting. Why do you think that? I don't know. I guess for the fun of it, I'll take the other side of it, and we'll Augury Group. I think Apple's going to purport really well. I think they're going to do really, really well. Yeah, that'll be my take. I think they're going to do really well. All right, we are coming up on the Flatiron building, everybody. And right in front of us, the Flatiron is going to be converted into 40 condominium units, which I think is a better move than having more than, let's say, 100 units in there. I think it'll sell a lot better. Hey, Double Eagle. Says Tom, well, I just got the iPhone 15 Pro Max, so that probably put Apple over the top. You know, so that's what I'm thinking, right? So anecdotally, now again, this is anecdotal data, so take this with a grain of salt, and we touched on this on last night's live stream. I have not once in my life, not once, seen anybody line up down the block and around the corner for an iPhone release. Never, until the iPhone 15. I was at the Apple store on 5th Avenue by my office, and people were lined up from when I got to the office at around 9 o'clock in the morning to when I left the office to do the stream right around 9 o'clock at night. And there was a line all the way from 5th Avenue beaming all the way down to Madison Avenue, literally right outside of my office door at 575 Madison. So I think this upgrade cycle is really going to push sales to beat Wall Street expectations. That's my prediction, based on total anecdotes. Exactly what you're not supposed to do is what I'm going to do. But as Peter Lynch says, sometimes that's the best way to gauge things, right? Talk to people, see what your kids are buying. Now, and that's a very, very slim portion of their revenue, right? There's other pieces to the pie, like services, cloud computing, software, right? So we'll see. It's going to be a very, very highly anticipated report, that's for sure. Hey, MBA Elias says Apple is nearing $10 billion in annual revenue from India by the end of this year. This should help its earnings. I agree. I'm extremely bullish on the Indian economy as well. Hang with Mark Mom says, Tom, yes, we went on the Apple Store directly. Oh, on launch day. It was a madhouse. Where was that? Did you go? I'm assuming you went somewhere in Florida. But I don't know. We'll see. You know, it's crazy. I find myself now, and, you know, I know we have a diverse audience. We have some, you know, iOS users and we have other Android users. But, you know, I think I pay over $20 a month for Apple subscriptions, mainly for extra storage. Does anybody else pay for extra iCloud storage? I think I pay like $20. I was looking at my credit card statement and I was like, how the hell am I paying Apple $20 a month? It's like you don't even realize it, because as you're taking photos and videos and your phone gives you a notification that says, you know, upgrade storage, you can't take any more photos. You just sort of click yes, you know, do whatever. You don't really pay attention to it. And I think I'm paying for like 2 terabytes of data, which I need, by the way. But, you know, think about how many other Americans, and not even Americans, just globally, are paying that same thing. Meld says you pay 99 cents a month. Gopher Hokey says nope, never. David S says yes, sir. Mendez says I do. Interesting. Pam B says, no, I don't pay for the extra storage anymore. David Sommer says, I pay for the extra storage. I have to, just because obviously I take a lot of video and things. But all right, so we pointed this out last night. Unfortunately, this brand new development is totally blocking and obstructing the beautiful view of the Empire State Building. It's kind of a travesty. This used to be the best view of the Empire State Building of all time, but they have this big, obnoxious building in the way now, which is unfortunate. Hang with Mark Mom says, Tom, I went to the one in Orlando, Florida. Copy that. Sparks Carnival says, cracks are starting to form in consumer spending on products deemed not essential. I think that will hurt Apple. Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll see. You know, one of the trends that I'm noticing, and I believe we talked about this 2 weeks ago, because 2 weeks ago was the start of earnings season, right? And earnings season, to Sparks Carnival's point, always starts off with the financials reporting earnings. So you have all of the Wall Street mega banks, you have the credit card issuers like Discover Financial, American Express, and the like. And the most standout trend that I'm seeing is in credit card delinquencies and charge-offs. And I wrote about this in my last piece that I sent to everybody on Thursday, which you can now listen to. And I actually went through the earnings slide deck of Bank of America, of JP Morgan Chase, and of Discover, and Citigroup. And I wrote an article and I sent it to you guys and I said, look at the slide deck and look at the trend of delinquencies, 30-day and 90-day past due on credit cards. And there's a direct correlation, a really, really stark correlation between delinquencies and this quantitative tightening cycle. Because when, you know, everybody was sitting at home and Donald Trump gave everybody free money and Joe Biden gave everybody free money and we flooded the market with stimulus, people were actually paying down their debt and they were making payments on time for credit cards and auto loans and all these things. But as the Federal Reserve started to take away the punch bowl from the party, because inflation was 9% in the United States, and all the money went away, well, consumers had to dip into their savings that they have saved up throughout the pandemic. So if I remember this correctly, I think it's Citi, pre-pandemic, so Q4 2019, average credit card delinquency rate was 3%. During 2000, I think it was Q4 2021, it hit an all-time low of like 1%. And every quarter since then, we've been trending higher and higher and higher back to pre-pandemic levels of credit card delinquency. Now, is this a cause for huge extremism, like, you know, ring the fire alarm? No, not yet, because we're still below pre-pandemic numbers for delinquencies. I think at Citi, it's right at 2.8%. And Q4 of 2019 was 3%. But as I explain all the time, it's not necessarily the number that matters, it's the trajectory of that number that matters, right? That's sort of how you identify an emerging trend. So credit card defaults and delinquencies may not be at pre-pandemic levels yet, but they're trending there. So if you want to see that in a visual, if you scan the QR code on your screen, for those of you who are new here and who haven't received it, it'll bring you to that article that I wrote, and you can see it. And I've taken screenshots from Citigroup's earnings report, from Discover's earnings report, from Bank of America's earnings report, and they published this for everybody to see on their investor relations page. And I remember vividly the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan. He called this a thorn in the side of the bank. And he says consumers, even though they're healthy, even though consumer spending is healthy, they're starting to see some cracks, to use Sparks Carnival's word there, a descriptive term, cracks in the consumer spending wall. You know, things are on shaky ground. People are starting to miss payments on credit cards. And auto loans are a whole other conversation, right? Maybe we'll write an entire piece about that. But generally speaking, Sparks Carnival is right. I think consumer spending has a high probability of slowing down going into Q1 2024. So if you want to read that, again, scan the QR code, punch in your email, and you will receive it. Let me catch up on some of the chats. Go for Hokies says, Tom, how do you think the student loan repayments could impact consumer spending? I think it'll make a pretty big impact. But then again, I don't have student loans, so I can't really get a big feel on this. But I mean, I could imagine if, people throughout the pandemic were not paying their student loans, and now all of a sudden you have to pay it. I mean, what is the average student loan payment in America? Does anybody know? I don't. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think the restart of student loan payments in the United States is going to make a major, major impact on consumer spending? Do we think yes or no? I mean, I think it'll make a little impact. Pup says, do student loans have interest in the USA? Boy, do they ever. Wow, Sparks Carnival says, Tom, the average monthly student loan payment is an estimated $503. Wow. Okay, so I think it'll definitely impact it. Optimus says, I think it will to some degree. Travel Nisa says, no, people who are wise would still pay down their loans. Maybe you're right. Again, nobody knows for sure, right? We're all just guessing. That's what we're doing, is we're just trying to make an educated guess. So you could be right. NBA Elias says $503 is like a car payment. Now, I think, NBA Elias, was this you? I think it was you who brought this to our attention. I believe the average auto payment now in the US is $900. To me, I just can't wrap my head around that. $900 for a car note? Hey, Kevin Grant says the best thing American workers could do is join a union. People power. Interesting, maybe. Dick says during the pandemic, they put a pause on student loans. Yeah, and the forbearances for the mortgages. Yes, you're correct. You are correct. I'm just trying to scan the comments here as they roll in. Meld says my car payment is $365, and I think that's high. Wow. I mean, and then you got to factor in insurance, right, guys? To insure. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, it seems like everything is going up. To insure your vehicle is really, really crazy. Now, okay, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a quick story. So a good friend of mine, who actually is, I met him through Walks in Wall Street. He apparently, just by the luck of chance, we live very close to each other in Miami. And he has a car down there, but he says that he registers the car in Pennsylvania because if he registered it in Florida, his insurance would be triple. I wonder how many people are doing that. I mean, that is wild. It's almost as wild as all that. But yeah, I mean, think about, paying for not only auto insurance in Florida, but homeowners insurance. That is out of hand too. Places like South Florida particularly, homeowners insurance is just absolutely out of hand. Places like California as well, due to the natural disasters and wildfires. It's crazy stuff. Yeah, Chris says then you got to add property taxes on top of that. Don't remind me. And since we had this big housing boom in the US, property taxes went sky high. You're 100% right. That's a really good point, Chris. I'm not even sure if that's your name. I can't really read it, but I'm just going to call you Chris. David S. says, I am from Pennsylvania, and when I lived in Tampa, my insurance was almost triple. Whew. That's crazy. Crazy, crazy. Yeah, I don't know. NBA Elias says, Tom, I just paid $1,600 for a new windshield. These high-tech windshields are brutal to replace. That's another thing, the parts. During the pandemic, I read this really, really good equity research report that was sent to me, and it was so good. It was like so good. I'll see if I could fish it out of my email box. But essentially, the analyst had this sort of worldview. Here's a beautiful gas lantern here. Spectacular. Now, here's sort of the thesis on this. And let me know if you guys agree or disagree, right? Be honest. You won't hurt my feelings. So if you look at the average, well, let me just make sure I don't get hit by a bike, food delivery bike or a moped. We'll be walks in roadkill here in a minute with the mopeds. So if you look at the average duration or length that American consumers own a vehicle, it's been significantly increasing. So the average car on the road is very, very old. And there's a few reasons that this may be. And mainly because consumers can't afford to buy a brand new vehicle, so they're holding on to their cars longer, thus could have a potential bull thesis for some of the auto part stores, right? Because chances are if you're holding on to your vehicle for longer, trying to extend the life of that car, well, guess what? You're going to need to spend all of your money or more money on part replacements. So one of the things during the pandemic, I think I read this research report late 2020, the analyst was very overweight. I think it was O'Reilly Auto Parts. And he thinks that trend is going to continue, that the average age of a vehicle on the road is going to continue to get older and older and older, and the demand for parts is going to continue to increase and rise. I thought that was interesting. I don't really cover this sector. I don't drive, as you guys know, but hey, Kristen S. says I just put, oh, yeah, just depend on wheels, typical. Yeah, it's the day before Halloween. I thought you were going to say I just paid to put tires on my car. Hey, Travis says that's absolutely true. It's buy used car in this market and find a trustworthy mechanic. Optimus 17 says my car is 16 years old. It's rare and I love it. It does cost a lot to repair. All right, let's cross here. We are almost at the West Village. But if you guys and girls are enjoying the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these live streams every day starting at 8:30, and we'd love to have you guys here. So if you're new, please click the subscribe button. Rob says, you are the trustworthy mechanic. Well, my uncle is, believe it or not, actually a very well-known classic Harley Davidson motorcycle builder. He builds these custom Harley Davidson motorcycles, and he gets featured in all these different magazines. It's pretty cool. We're like total polar opposites, but he builds these ridiculous, really, really expensive, like $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 bikes for clients, and they get featured in, some shows here in Manhattan and in all these Harley rider places. I don't know. All right, let's cut through Washington Square Park, guys.
Tell me
Hey, Sparks Carnival says Harley Davidson stock got clocked last week on Q3 earnings. They pointed the finger at inflation because their customers financed their purchases. Yeah, Sparks Carnival, thank you for saying that, by the way. I had no idea they even reported. Oh, that's strange. Washington Square Park is completely empty. Maybe they shut it down for the... Oh, look at this. You have a great view of the Empire State Building. And then from the other side, you can see the Trade Center. So you have the Empire this way, and then you have the Trade Center on the other side. Daryl says Washington Square Park is haunted. Maybe. I gotta adjust the brightness. Lola says, I admire guys who could build bikes. I do too. Jafet Perez says Tesla Cybertruck will be a great vehicle. I'd get it if I could fit it in New York City. But I don't think they could fit through the New York City streets. I'd probably be stuck every other turn. All right, let's take a little bit of a detour here because it looks like the NYPD has closed down Washington Square Park, probably because it's the day before Halloween and it can get a little bit rowdy in here. But that's my favorite day of the year to explore Washington Square Park, is on Halloween. I guess we'll have to wait till next year. But anyway, Sparks Carnival makes a good point. I did not know Harley Davidson actually reported earnings last week. But essentially they're saying that customers are pulling back on spending because maybe buying Harleys is not a necessity. Maybe it's more of a need that you do when times are good, right? Which I guess makes sense. Traditional vehicles are more of a need for a way of transportation, I would bet. And again, I don't have this data, but I would bet that the vast majority of people who own a motorcycle own it for enjoyment purposes. It's probably not their daily driver. You never know. Ooh, John says I bought a new one, top of the line, at full price this year. Nice. If that's what you like, enjoy it. You know what I mean? Enjoy it. That's what life is about. If you work hard and you've been diligent, you should be able to be rewarded and enjoy life a little bit. And if you want to buy a Harley, go ahead. If that's what makes you happy, if that's what you enjoy, do it. All right, let me check the battery here, guys. Hey, D Street Media. Long time no see. God bless you, my friend. It's good to see you here. Speaking of Harleys, I think we got one coming. Oh no, it's just a really old car. All right, so we're approaching the West Village. Now, I have no idea where this house is that everybody wanted me to go to. So, where it is, because I've never watched Friends, but so if you want to let me know where this house is. If not, we'll just cruise around for a little bit. Maybe we'll stumble into it sooner or later. You have these beautiful townhouses here. I think I may need to plug in my phone in a second. Happy Halloween, look at this. 90 Bedford. 10-4. Copy that. All right, I'm gonna have to set you guys down on the floor. So just be a little bit mentally prepared if you see any creepy crawlers around there, okay? So make sure you look alive as I set you guys down on the dirty New York City concrete. All right, how'd you guys make out down there? Good? I had to plug the phone in. Hopefully this will extend the stream just until we can get to this spot. All right, 6th Avenue, make a left. Well, look, guys, I think we covered a lot tonight. For those of you who are just joining, one of the main topics that we talked about tonight was fiscal policy in the United States. Oftentimes we talk about monetary policy, right? But today, due to Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones being in New York City at the Robin Hood conference, we essentially did a little bit of a breakdown and a deep dive into their interview. So if you are just joining and you want to watch that interview, all you have to do is type !PTJ. Once again, !PTJ in the chat, and the Nightbot will drop the link to that interview. This is Cornelia Street. Now I had to unplug the mic, so it may be a little bit windy. It's very windy tonight in Manhattan. Someone says, what's the difference between fiscal and monetary policy? That's a very good question. It's not a stupid question at all. I would argue that probably 50% of all Americans don't know the difference. But essentially, fiscal policy is set by the government, right? Government spending. Monetary policy is set by the central bank or the Federal Reserve, who we are going to hear from on November 1st at the conclusion of the FOMC meeting. We just passed Taylor Swift's old apartment right here. 23 Cornelia Street. Good, how are you? I'm doing good, thanks. I didn't really get that comment, but just because I'm holding the phone in an awkward position, I think someone says, what do you think the country is headed? I'm very optimistic about the country. Very, very optimistic, even though it may have sounded like we've been very negative tonight. I am very, very optimistic on the U.S. All right, hold on one second. Okay, I think we're good. So I don't know where this place is, to be honest. We'll just walk around and we'll see if we can run into it. But we'll just enjoy the walk through the village. But look, I think long term I'm very, very optimistic. Because regardless of all of the things we talked about tonight, you know, the increasing amount of debt, right? The US Treasury today announced that they're going to borrow an additional $776 billion just in the next 3 months. No matter all of the incompetence in the government, no matter all of the crazy geopolitical nonsense that's going on in the world, at the end of the day, entrepreneurs choose to come to America to build their products and services. All of the innovation that is going to power the global economy, by and large, is going to happen here. It's not going to happen in China. It's not going to happen in the Middle East. It's not going to happen in Latin America. There'll be some innovation, but the lion's share of it, as we're looking at the Freedom Tower, it's going to happen here. That is a guarantee. It's going to happen here. I always like to look at this statistic. Look at the amount of people who revoked their US citizenship last year, and then look at the amount of people that are applying for citizenship, applying for visas and green cards and things like that to get into the country. It's a staggering, staggering difference. Everybody wants to come here for one reason only. The US has a set of social principles that essentially say, if you come to the United States and you work hard and you create a product or service, or you work for a company and you add value there, you have the equal opportunity to get rich and get wealthy for yourself and have individualized rights and personal freedoms. And so long as that stays intact, which it will. Ooh, let's go down this street. This looks beautiful down here. So long as that framework and that fabric stays intact, this virtuous cycle of innovation is going to continue. And there's going to be more Apples, more Microsofts, more Amazons, and the golden goose of capitalism is just going to continue to churn out amazing innovation that's going to make all of our lives better in perpetuity forever. regardless of who's president, regardless of what politician says what, entrepreneurs wake up every day, they build, and they go to work. So I am very, very optimistic. All right, Bedford, here we are. I just don't know where, which way it is. Line sync says, Tom, could you be any more unaware? Listen, I was born in 1995, pal. I don't watch Friends, okay? I've said that a million times, but I'm walking down here and I'm gonna bring you to the spot, and you know, we'll do our thing. Take it easy, take it easy. You know what? Let me check what time it is. I actually may need a boogie on out of here. I gotta be up at 6:30 in the morning. All right, guys. I do apologize. I gotta pull the ripcord on this stream because I gotta be up at 6:30, and I forgot that I started the stream at almost 10 o'clock at night, and that means it's almost probably 11. So everybody. Oh, somebody says it's the opposite way. All right, let's head to the opposite way. We're gonna see the friends and we're gonna pay our respects, because I think it is important. I do think the cultural impact that show has had on New York is very big. And I do think it does mean a great deal. I do. So we'll charge the opposite way. We'll check it out. And then we'll call it a night. I love walking the West Village though. It's stunning here. It's quieter than Midtown. The architecture is really beautiful. And it really feels like you're at home here. It really does. Kind of feels very New England, actually. Oh, look at this. This was an old horse stable. Yeah, the LT Process, it looks like the south end of Boston. All right, here it is. That's nice that they did this, though. That's really nice that people... So it's in front of the Little Owl.
Yo me enteré por ti, por la publicación tuya. Después ahí vi tu publicación y vi las fotos oficiales y no creí.
I think it was nice that they did that. Let's see it from the other side. All right, let me make my way back to the train. But yeah, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. If you enjoyed the live stream, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. I think that, Tribute Memorial was really nice. I think that was good because Friends did have a pretty big impact on the culture of New York City. So I think that was nice that we went and saw that. We will be live tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. And if you want to join us there, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to receive all of our market research, so everything that we've talked about on the live stream today, I compile into a research piece and send out to all of our friends every other Thursday after the market closes. So if you want to support our work here at Walks on Wall Street for free, just scan the QR code or type !news, NEWS in the chat, where you could sign up to the Behind the Street newsletter for free and read all of our work. And again, that'll be every other Thursday after the market closes. So Sherry, thank you so much. Hang with Mark Mom, all of our great moderators, and all of our new friends here on the stream. Thank you so much for joining. NMB045, Edison, Wendy, England, Dave S, Hawaii, MBA Elias. There's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. And also, if you enjoy the newsletter or the stream, feel free to share it with a friend, as it helps the channel out immensely. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.